In this video, I want to talk a little bit about a jerkbait. And more specifically, I want to talk about a very simple little tip that you can do with a jerkbait that I truly believe will increase the number of fish that you catch with the bait. I know that for me, over the last couple of years, it's something that I have implemented in a jerkbait in the way that I work the bait. And I'm telling you, my bites with the jerkbait and also my confidence with this bait has gone through the roof. But before we get into that small tip, guys, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Finn Fishing. Right now, if you buy one of my USA-made sun shirts for the month of April 2024, you can actually get a free rod glove. So I have rod gloves in a number of different sizes and colors. One's for casting rods, one for spinning rods. All you got to do is add the sun shirt you like to cart, add the rod glove that you like to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout. It is the best way to help support this channel. All right, let's talk about the jerkbait. And like I said, you know, a jerkbait has, not only is it one of my confidence bait now, but it's actually one of my favorite baits to fish. And that's actually really funny for me to even say, because for a number of years, I really didn't like a jerkbait. I just didn't like picking the thing up. I didn't have any confidence in it. Like, I got into bass fishing when I was like 13, 14 years old. That's when I really started bass fishing. I used to fish for catfish a lot and other species, but bass fishing around 13 or 14, and probably until I was in college, like probably around 20 years old, I just hated a jerkbait. And then I started fishing it more. I started catching a lot more fish on it. But over probably the last 5 years, I feel like this is one of my main tools. It's one of my main weapons that I use when I go fishing, no matter what time of the year it is. I think that for a lot of us, we understand how good of a bait this is, no matter what time of the year it is now. I use it a lot in the warm weather months, and this is something that definitely applies in the warm weather months, this small tip. Now, you're probably wondering, Tyler, what's this little tip that you got? Now, I want you to know that this is something that I've kind of figured out with conjunction with the forward-facing sonar, but you do not need forward-facing sonar to do this at all. This is just something that you can implement in your cast in the way that you work a jerkbait every single time. But for me, it's something that I have noticed using a forward-facing sonar like Mega Live. And so all it is, guys, is I have found with forward-facing sonar that bass really like kind of this motion that is more upward, like this. And this is something that is not necessarily new in bass fishing, but it's just something that I'm starting to see a lot in certain baits, that is truly the way that bass want it. We've talked for years how bass like a bait dropping, how you should kill a bait every now and then, and when it drops, that's when the fish have it. But this movement that's kind of upward is truly a triggering mechanism for a bass. And this is something you see a lot if you're an ice fisherman, for example. This is something that you have seen a lot with guys who fish in the ice, is that, you know, if a fish comes up on their bait in the ice, you will see these guys all the time bringing the bait up. It looks more natural that something is trying to get away from a predator, and they will continue to bring it up all the way to the surface. And sometimes they'll catch these fish just below the surface of the ice, but they have brought that fish all the way from the bottom. And if you think about schooling bass, what do? They push fish upwards. They push fish to the surface because they want to pin them at the surface where they can easily get them. So now that you kind of understand a little bit about just bass behavior, think about a jerkbait. When you cast a jerkbait out there and you're bringing it through the water column, because of the bill, it's basically just going to continue to kind of either stay on like this, like a parallel to the surface, or it's going to go kind of downwards like this, you know. And some of them are going to go side to side, which can also be a triggering mechanism, but that kind of depends on the brand that you have. But something that I have noticed with the jerkbait, and this is the simple trick, is that when I work this bait, I am now always adding in some pops upwards. This is something that, you know, like I said, with forward-facing sonar, I have seen this be, there are days where this is the only way that they will bite this particular bait. So you'll be casting it and you're jerking it kind of down or maybe to the side. I would say that about 2 or 3 times in a cast, when you're jerking that bait, just bam, 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 pop it upwards, pop it up. And you can do that, like I said, if you have forward-facing sonar or not, you can do this. If you're fishing from the bank, you can do this. Pop that bait upwards, and that's gonna change the trajectory of this jerkbait. Instead of doing the same thing, all of a sudden you pop it 2, 3, 4 times upwards, and now it's going bam, 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 and you have that bait coming up and away from the fish. And what I've seen from fish that are tracking this bait is all of a sudden you bring it up, man, that change in direction going up is literally the trigger. It is what will make these fish eat a bait. It is the difference between going out sometimes and watching a lot of fish follow your bait and then having fish actually commit to the bait. And like I said, you can do this whether you have forward-facing sonar or not. Now, the other thing that's really important to understand about this is that it is not just a jerkbait thing. This motion kind of going away from the fish, just think of all the different lures that we can implement this in. I mean, you're seeing it a lot right now with the jig head minnow, which is, it really is more of a forward-facing sonar technique, but you can do it whether or not you have forward-facing. But there's a lot of lures that we fish that I think we can start kind of implementing this upward motion, because I think, like for example, a chatterbait. Think if you're fishing a chatterbait out there in grass and you're bringing that bait and you don't know, but there's a fish actually behind that bait. Maybe you're ripping it out. Instead of just ripping it out and letting it fall down, maybe you should actually rip it up and speed it up so that that thing shoots out and it looks like it's getting away from the fish that may be tracking it. That might be a humongous triggering mechanism. I have seen, not with a chatterbait, but with bottom baits. How many times, I know that this has happened to you guys, where you'll be working a bottom bait. Maybe it's a worm, maybe it's a tube jig, maybe it's something like that. And then all of a sudden you think you're kind of done with the cast. So you reel that thing up and there's a bass hot on the back of that bait. You see it with your own eyes. Again, this upward motion, I can't explain how important it is. And it's something that I've definitely seen to be very important with a jerkbait. And so I actually just did a video, guys, where I was fishing a jerkbait down on a lake in Kentucky, and I caught a lot of fish on a jerkbait that day, and they were all hitting the bait because of me popping it upward. So I'm gonna leave a link for that video right here if you guys wanna check that out. Also, if you wanna check out the fin fishing gear, you can click right here. I will see you guys tomorrow.